In this video, I am going to teach you and explain to you how you can create more abundance of the positive things that you want in your life. And that's the perfect starting point, and I'll get straight into it, which is the fact that we are abundant in everything and anything. So we can be abundant in love, we can be abundant in money, we can be abundant in health, etc. But we can also be abundant in the negative things, okay? Abundant in bad health, abundant in not having enough money, abundant in trauma, etc. So often people think the word abundance is like associated with all these positive things, but the truth is we are abundant in absolutely anything and everything. I like the analogy of like a shopping center, right? Like in aisle one, you've got all of the positive sides of abundance. You've got the money, the love, the joy, the opportunities, etc., right? The health. But if you go to aisle two, you've got the stress, the doubt, the pain, etc. So it starts off with the simple understanding that we can be abundant in either end of the spectrum, and more often than not, because we are human beings, and especially if we're not really aware of this concept, we are probably abundant in some positive things, but also abundant in some negative things. But if we're being completely honest with ourselves, who really wants to be abundant in stress and poor health and not making enough money and all those things? Like, no one, right? But it does start with the awareness that we literally can be abundant in anything and everything. So in terms of how this all starts and how it all works, essentially it's all fixated on your thoughts and your thinking pattern. What you think, you create in reality. And I know that for some that might be a bit of like a voodoo like concept, but it's very much so true, okay? So for example, if you're constantly focused on a problem, right? The problem that, for example, my foot really hurts, and you're constantly focused on the problem, you are only going to run into more problems. Whereas if you are focused on the solution, then you are going to run into more solutions and management schemes, right? It really does start with the shift and the simple awareness that you can be abundant in all of the positive things you want, but you can also be abundant in all of the negative things you don't want. And especially if there's things that we really, really don't want. Likelihood is you're thinking, I really, really don't want that. I really, really don't want this anymore. But because that's how you're saying it and how you're thinking about it, you are fixating on it, which is just creating more abundance of the things that you don't want. Now, this is where we run into the concept and something that literally just opened my whole eyes, my whole brain, my whole world, which is the idea that you can flip all of this, okay? So if you can imagine the worst, if you can experience the worst of all things, that means you can also imagine the best of things and experience the best of things, okay? So for example, you could not only imagine, but maybe you have created and accumulated unawarely a really unhealthy relationship, a really toxic relationship. Or maybe it's a relationship where you just keep coming into conflict, you keep coming into arguments, and it just feels like the worst thing ever, right? But there's also the idea where if it can be this low, then it can also be that high, simply by shifting and imagining the best, and instead of focusing on the problems, you are focusing on the solutions. And I know that might seem a bit like, oh, but no, this is a toxic relationship, right? For example, if we're looking at the aspect of relationships, I'm not saying that it's attached to that person, right? If it truly is like a toxic relationship, understand that, okay, so relationships can be that bad. You can also imagine a relationship to be that bad. But on the flip side, a relationship might be the most healing thing that you've ever experienced. And it's the complete opposite of a toxic relationship, right? So what I'm saying is, like, if you can experience the worst of all things, it means that there's also the capability to experience the best of all things. And it's not necessarily, like, especially with relationships, going to be attached to that person. In some circumstances, it could. Maybe you're just focusing on the problems. Maybe all you're doing is arguing. And, you know, there's true love there and all those kinds of things. I'm not a relationship therapist, okay? But what I am saying, like, is that maybe you just need to focus on the solutions. And quite potentially, the worst of all the arguments and everything like that can be solutions and make you tighter and make you stronger, right? So you can like flip the ladder. Like, for example, if you're like, oh, what if this doesn't work? What if this business idea doesn't work? What if this relationship doesn't work? Or what if, you know, anything? What if something doesn't work, right? And as humans, we all have this state of innate fear, okay? We don't want things to go bad because it's unexpected and blah, 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 blah. But, you know, so we also have to understand that we've been wired like this because of evolution and all those kinds of things. But basically, if you're in the state of fear, oh, what if it doesn't work out? What if it doesn't work out? Well, then it's probably not going to work out, right? But instead, if you think, you know what, if I flip that, what if this turns out to be the best and better than I could even imagine? Then you can see how, okay, it could be this low, or it also could be this high. And if you think, what if it turns out better than imagined, then it probably is going to turn out better than imagined. And another really important thing to talk about here is just to be patient with yourself and don't be too hard on yourself, because when you're first kind of inserted with this idea of what actually abundance is and how it actually works, you're probably going to pick up on yourself, oh, I do think in a state of fear. I do always think of the worst possible thing, or I am always worried things are going to turn out badly. And maybe you're a little bit hard on yourself about that, but understand that like we have been wired through evolution, every single human, to be in a state of fear and think like that. But in doing so, because of the way society is these days, we don't necessarily have to be like that. We don't have to be sitting down worrying when our next meal is going to be and when some tiger is going to come past that we can like spear and all those kinds of things, okay? This is where the wiring is coming back from, really far back in evolution, okay? But the thing is, you know, we don't have to be that way, right? So when we catch ourselves thinking, oh, what if it doesn't work? Or maybe you do feel like you are in the worst case scenario right now. Understand that it could also be the best case scenario. And it really just changes. If you want to create the abundance of positivity and the abundance of the things you want and not the abundance of the things you don't want, you need to stop thinking about the things that you don't want and fixate instead of on the things that you do want. Another thing is also, and this is something I have to be aware of as well at times, is when you're focusing on what you do want, you don't want to put it on a pedestal, okay? For example, like, I don't know, I really want a dog, okay? I really, really want a dog, right? And remember, one way we could think about it is, I don't have a dog. I don't have a dog, right? See, that's a very negative way to look at it, okay? And therefore, I'm not going to not create myself, but attract a dog into my life, okay? Whereas if I think, oh, okay, I really, really want a dog, I really, really want a dog, well, you know, that's all good and fine. But if you put the dog up on this pedestal as though you'll finally be happy when you have this dog, right? Or, you know, you'll feel so much better when you have a dog, and you're putting it up on this pedestal, then you're also creating more resistance in terms of just allowing that into your life, because you're not allowing it into your life. It's up on this pedestal, right? Now, another thing I want to say is a lot of the things where like, okay, if I am the conscious creator of my reality, meaning you really do create the things that, you know, you think about, and we also have the ability to change things and create a new sense of living or a new sense of being, okay? When we understand all of this, especially with goals, important goals to you, you know, it doesn't just mean that they are just going to be there tomorrow or be there in the next minute or be there in the next hour, okay? Because that, quite frankly, is not how life works. It means that when you are beginning to allow this into your life and you're thinking in this way, you will come up to challenges, okay? It's important that when you come up to these challenges that are kind of like stepping stones towards those goals, You have to learn to embrace them rather than seeing the challenge as some negative thing that will actually create resistance, and more likely you're not going to overcome the challenge necessary in order to allow what you want in. So all in all, we can be abundant in everything we want, but we could also be abundant in everything that we don't want, simply based on the way we think. And abundance in terms of like positive abundance and the things that you want is a certain frequency, it's a certain energy. Because remember, our thoughts are also tied to emotions, which create certain frequencies, okay? But on the flip side, again, if you are fixated on the things that you don't want, then you are also in a frequency that is different. But basically, your abundance at the moment, the abundance of the things that you like and the things that you're grateful for, but also the things that you don't like and you don't want, are all connected to a certain frequency, okay? And this is why if we change our thoughts and the way that we think about things, you are going to start to change that frequency, and therefore your life is going to be aligned with a different frequency, a higher frequency. I'm gonna keep this video very short and sweet, but yeah, all in all, understand that we are creative beings, okay? We really are the conscious creators of our reality. You can create anything that you want, but you can also create everything that you don't want, simply based on the way you think. It's not necessarily your fault if you think in a certain way, especially, you know, given the fact that we are still humans, right? And we come through this evolution where we did have to be in a state of fear and things like that. And maybe, you know, your life is yours, but maybe back in years of your childhood or whatever, you were in a state of fear. Maybe your brain's been wired to be in a state of fear. Also understand that you have the ability to change that, right? Just because it happened, or just because you are a certain way, it doesn't mean that you have to be that certain way for the rest of your life, okay? And if you're not, you know, truly happy, or, well, you know, we experience life, we're not always going to be happy, but if you don't feel like you are truly aligned with yourself, and you don't feel like your life is truly aligned with what you truly desire and what's in your gut and what's in your heart, I come to the understanding that maybe you live in fear, maybe you live in doubt, maybe a lot of the things you think are coming from a state of fear, a state of doubt, or a state of stress, which is only going to create more fear and more doubt and more stress. And when we can flip that, we can start to create more abundance of, instead of the negative things, more abundance of the positive things that we want in life. So that's it for today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, definitely hit the subscribe button and drop a like as well, so that I know you like this video, and I will continue to come out with more content similar to this. And of course, if you think it's going to be beneficial to anyone in your life, you know, you're more than welcome to share it. But that's it for today, guys. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.